Welcome to Caregiver Cast with Mary Elaine Petrucci. Are you overwhelmed raising a family, working full-time, caring for a parent or grandparent? It can be challenging when you're doing it alone. Caregiver Cast helps busy, burned-out professionals reduce their stress and overwhelm to create a better caregiving experience for themselves and their loved one. Caregiver Cast brings caregivers together with experts who provide information in a variety of areas. In each episode, you'll get tips on topics such as finance, legal, medical, self-care, community resources, mindset, and more. We're here to make your caregiving journey a more rewarding one. Acquire the confidence and skills to be a more capable caregiver by implementing the resources and strategies from these expert thought leaders. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. And now here's your host, Mary Elaine Petrucci.
Hi, welcome to Caregiver Cast. My guest today is Denise Garrett, who will be talking to us about courageous practices to improve your life and her caregiving that she had done for her parents. So before I formally introduce Denise, I like to just give you some background information about her. So she's the creator of Made to Thrive system. She's the author of a best-selling book, Made to Thrive, 8 Courageous Practices to Improve Your Life, Find Inner Peace, and Be Happy. She's had thousands of clients served, and she wants to ask these compelling questions. Ever felt like you could be successful and live the life of your dreams if only? If only you had more time, money, and energy, support, fill in the blank. Denise Garrett is an expert at giving people the proven strategies, tools, encouragement, and support they need to overcome if-onlys in life so that they achieve their dreams and enjoy their best life. As a former firefighter, she knows what it's like to fight fires and deal with tragedies physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. As her county's first and only female firefighter during her years of service, Denise knows what it takes to be heard in a world where she was pulled in a million different directions and bombarded by stress at every turn. And she knows what it takes to thrive in spite of stress and pain. After leaving the fire service, Denise went on to become a therapist, later switching to a coaching model that serves her clients better. Her combined experience from her own school of hard knocks as a firefighter and therapist/coach led her to develop the Made to Thrive system. When she's not sharing her Made to Thrive system with people, Denise enjoys spending time with family, friends, and her dogs. She also enjoys spending time in nature, hiking, golfing, and adventure racing. Welcome to Caregiver Cast, Denise.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you, and it's an honor to be here with you, Mary Elaine, because you're just such a beautiful soul and you give so much to our world that's so needed.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your background being a firefighter. I have to commend you for that, and to be the only female on an entire male firefighting force must have been pretty amazing.
It was amazing and challenging and rewarding all at the same time.
So let's just start a little bit about how you went from firefighting into coaching.
So as a firefighter, it's a very physical job, and I wasn't sure if I could do it until I could retire because I had an injury. And when I was out healing from my injury, I was like, oh my God, can I really do this job until I can retire? And so I thought about other positions in the department that I could do, and none of them really appealed to me because I really loved running into the burning buildings. So I started thinking of other options, and one of them, I love helping people. That's my thing. I love serving others. And at the time, I volunteered at a place called the Georgia Council on Child Abuse. And it's kind of like a hotline anyway. People would call in for help and
Mm-hmm.
to de-stress and to get advice on how to handle something or where to go to get the help they needed. And my supervisors thought I was really good at it, and I actually enjoyed it. And so between a combination of that and working calls where, in particular, I'm thinking of women who were victims of domestic violence, I
Mm-hmm.
just felt like there was more I could do to serve others. So I wanted therapy to be my backup career, if you will, because I was also told that it would take at least probably 3 to 5 years to get into a graduate school program. Much to my surprise, it happened the very first time I applied, so
Awesome.
much sooner than I thought. And I just kind of took that as a divine wink that that's where I was supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
I did.
Well, I'm glad that you jumped in there. I think going from firefighting to coaching, they have a lot of similarities. So I'm glad that you're able to use the knowledge that you've gained to help other people get to where they need to be. Let's go from that point of view to how you were able to get your parents to get their affairs in order. Can you explain how, like, the coaching background may have helped you in terms of coaching your family through those difficult times?
The first step, actually, I can give credit for being a firefighter because at some point my father and mother really needed to put a will in place
Mm,
and get their affairs in order in that regard. And I think that my father was scared to do that because he thought if he had a will, he would die. And
yeah,
so
right.
in
I know that's a
conversation,
common misnomer. Yes, I understand.
yeah. So with that conversation with him, I just said, Dad, if that's what you're worried about, really, I've had a will since I was in the fire department and I'm still here. This was like years later. And he just
Hmm.
looked at me funny and he says, you have a will? Because I was still really young. And I said, yeah, that's part of the process when we go through rookie school. They want to make sure that we have our affairs in order so that we're not worried about that when
Hmm.
we're fighting a fire, and also so that our loved ones are taken care of if should something happen to us on the job or
Hmm.
anywhere. I mean, so that started it. But really, when my father was diagnosed with multiple myeloma bone marrow cancer in stage
Mm.
4,
Wow.
um,
Sorry to
by
hear that.
then I had been a therapist and coach for a number of years, and um, I can tell anybody going through that experience as a caregiver for a loved one, it's hard. I mean, there's no denying that it's hard, that it's heartbreaking.
Yes,
Um, and
definitely.
so just giving yourself the space to feel those feelings is important, and taking care of yourself as well as your loved one. It's tricky, but I think it's important to allow yourself to have all of the feelings.
Hmm.
So, for instance, I'm thinking of my mom. When my father was going through his stuff, at one point she just got angry, not at
Mm.
my father per se or me, but the situation. And my father experienced anger as well because it was so unfair. And
Hmm.
those are normal
Hmm.
feelings. Like, I think sometimes people want to shy away from anger and frustration, but I think it's very normal. I didn't go through what my father went through when I had knee surgery, but I can tell you that I was frustrated that I couldn't do the things that I was used to doing in the way I was used to doing them.
Hmm.
And so I experienced some frustration, and I just think people should give themselves the space to feel whatever those feelings are, um, and and find healthy outlets for them.
That's a really good point. May I ask what healthy outlets you found during this time with your father?
Spending time in nature has always been important to me. Um,
Hmm.
and when I couldn't like get away to take a hike, sometimes it just meant sitting out on my back deck and just enjoying the sunshine or the breeze or whatever it was, the clouds floating by.
Hmm.
Um, And I had a dog at that time, and they're such bundles of joy, and he certainly was my little angel through that process. So getting the love from him and allowing that love to be there, and just really soak it in was important. And also exercising whenever I could, that really helped. And then thank God I just had a wonderful support system, a dear group of close-knit friends who stood by me through that time and through all of my challenges, whether I was having like a good day or a stressful day or a sad day or a mad day or whatever kind of day it was. I had people that I could talk to. And if you're going through something like this, whether you're the person experiencing the health condition or you're the person caregiving for them, I think it's important to have a good social support system.
Oh, totally. And I think that's the only way that you can, in a very safe way, express those emotions and get the support that you need, because you get really pretty stressed out, burnt out, and overwhelmed if you don't. So I appreciate those two bits of information and advice for caregivers, because I know it's not an easy task that they go through.
It is not.
Were you
And
providing direct care to your father?
my mom and I kind of shared some duties there, and then certain tasks he was just more comfortable with me doing, because my mom was so uncomfortable doing them that, and I didn't mind. It was like, it's just part, it's just life to me, so it didn't matter. So that made him more comfortable. And then I also used humor with him. So if you have anybody out there that's caregiving for somebody that has a sense of humor, I decided at some point that for those long nights, he was in and out of the hospital so much. And so for those long nights when we weren't sleeping, and I knew that he would probably be worried about his life and his life ending and those kinds of things, I just decided to start collecting jokes and funny stories. And I kept them in a notebook. And whenever we would have one of those long nights and he would wake up looking kind of scared, for lack of a better word, I would, comfort him, like, hey, Dad, I'm here. Can I get you anything? That kind of thing. And then that kind of became our thing. I would pull out the book and share something, and we would laugh. And then sometimes the nurses that were coming in to care for him would laugh too. And it got to be a thing. And he would wake up sometimes and say, get your book. And I knew what he was talking about. And then sometimes the nurses would come in and say, do you mind if we take a look at your book? So humor has a very healing effect for us. And even during those dark nights of the soul, so to speak, it can be used to help just, lift the energy a little.
I think you're right. I think sometimes you need some levity in the situation, because you get to the point, I know for myself, that if there wasn't something to break that tension, then it just made it a little bit more challenging to work with my parent. So you're right. I think just enjoying whatever time and laughing that you can do really does calm everyone down, and it gives you a better relationship with that person. So thank you for sharing that. So what was different in your experience than after your father had passed? Did he make the decision of how he wanted to pass away, or?
More or less, so he was in treatment, and then he went through kidney failure, and he was on dialysis. And he hit a point in his process. He went through chemo, radiation. He went through the ringer, man. But he hit a point to where he told me that he felt like he was a bird and his body was a cage, and he just wanted to be free.
Oh my gosh, what an analogy.
And I understood it. And my job, as I saw it, was to be his advocate for whatever he needed and wanted. That was my job. And he asked me so at some point we went to dialysis and they couldn't dialyze him. So we had to go to the emergency room because that is a life-threatening condition.
Yes.
And when we were in the ER, a doctor came in and basically, laid out his choices for him. And, he could go through dialysis, but we were headed towards the finish line. We were very close anyway. So he talked to my dad about his options, very lovingly, I think, very compassionately. And my father just decided that he was done. He didn't want any more things poking in him. He was just done. He was ready to go into hospice care. And so that was his choice. And we moved him into hospice care, and he literally died within 48 hours.
Oh my gosh.
It was good though, because when we were moving him, I called the people that I knew he would want to see and that would want to see him. And thankfully, to my knowledge, everyone that wanted to visit with him had that chance to do so before he passed.
Oh, how wonderful.
So, he kind of chose, in a way, his own terms, if you will.
Well, I think that's important. I can relate. My father had pneumonia. I brought him to the hospital, and then they, on a Saturday, he was discharged on a Monday, and then I guess he had a relapse on a Wednesday. And at this point, I was about 5 hours from Denver, and I called like the priest and his friends, and I guess they had a wonderful time in that afternoon. And when I went to see him, I stayed with him all night, held his hand, and I knew something was going to happen because all of his bodily functions were shutting down. And he had mentioned that there's some children dying in the corner, and then it was adults dying in the corner. And I'm like, and he seemed okay in the morning. And then I guess when I had to step away for a short time, he decided to pass without me being there, and he went the way he wanted. So I can relate to your story with your father.
Yeah,
Very similar.
it is. It's interesting that you brought up the point to me that sometimes our loved ones choose to pass when we're there, and sometimes they choose to pass when we're not. And there's no right or wrong in that. So anybody that might be beating themselves up going, oh, I should have been there. You weren't meant to be there, or you would have been.
Right.
Because sometimes I think people can't pass if we're there kind of holding on.
Yes.
They just need the space, the freedom and the spaciousness to do what their soul or spirit needs to do. So if anybody is listening and you've been like upset because you weren't there, my wish for you is that you'll let that go and trust the process, because there's something so much greater at work here than any of us comprehend.
Oh, totally. I agree. And I think, he did talk with all his friends, the day before, and he was ready.
I felt like, I knew he was ready the day he told me that he felt like he was a bird and his body was a cage and he wanted to be free. Like that was very clear to me. That was him saying, I'm ready. And of course, like anybody, I was sad because I knew I was going to miss him. But I just got it so deeply that I wanted that for him. I wanted him to be free. And I didn't want him to suffer. And I think that's true for all of us with our loved ones. We don't want our loved ones to suffer.
No, we don't. We
Yeah,
don't.
the hardest part for me with both my father and my mother now is just feeling so helpless, like I can't take away their pain and suffering. And that's hard. I feel helpless and I don't like that feeling. But I do what I can. And I ask, in my mom's case, every day, a couple of times a day, what can I do for you? Is there anything I can do? What do you need? And when she gives me something, I do it. And, we're cranking right along.
Mm-hmm. So how is your caregiving experience different with your mom and and your dad? I'm sure it.
So they are different they're different personalities
Right.
to begin with. So I
I'm
want to
sure.
start there. But in some ways I found dealing with my father much easier than dealing with my mother. My mother is very stubborn. Not that my father wasn't. I think we all are in my family, but my mom she can be illogical
Mm,
and unreasonable. And so I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. This was before she got sick. This was like years ago. My father had passed, and we had had a really rainy spell. Like it had been raining for 2 weeks, almost nonstop. And there were puddles everywhere. Like there was water standing in places where it normally doesn't stand because the ground could not absorb the water.
mm-hmm.
But my mom calls me and insists that I come over and take a picture of this puddle in her backyard because the lawn, she had some yard work done recently and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't draining the way it was supposed to. And so I asked her to tell me what it was doing. And it actually was doing exactly what the guy said it was going to do. But she insisted that I come over in the pouring rain with a cold to take a picture to send to the guy. And I had to send it because she didn't have a computer. And so I just explained to her, like, Mom, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And she was just on a position that, no, it's not. And, all this stuff. So when I sent him the email, I did send the picture because I told her I would. And I said, my mom is upset because she doesn't think it's working the way that you said it would. I, on the other hand, know that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just hard with her because I have to be the bridge between the people that help me maintain her household and the voice of reason and her, who can be a bit unreasonable sometimes. So that part gets really challenging. My father, on the other hand, was very logical. And so if I said, Dad, it's been raining for 2 weeks, there's puddles everywhere, there's water standing in places where it's never stood before, he would have been like, oh yeah, you're right. So just different personalities, really. And my father was much more worldly than my mother.
Okay.
He had traveled more. He had like mom basically grew up, lived with her sister and brother-in-law until she married my father and then moved in with my father. So she never really lived on her own versus my father, who he was in the military for a while. He was up in DC on a job for a while. So he had developed his independence. So anyway, it's different personalities. And I think my mom is, well, she is. Her sister, I asked her if she'd always been like this. And my mom is a worrywart. And so that doesn't help her facing the end of her life. She has all these worries and fears that I don't have personally. And my father, he had a few, but he managed to, I think, work through them before he passed. So very different. And I don't think it's a difference between male and female just as much as personality, world experience.
I think that's a great point to consider. I think you're right. I think it doesn't really matter what sex you are, it's just who you are as a person. And like you said, it depends on their worldly experiences and what they've been through before and during their marriage. So it really, there's so many factors to think about. So from these two caregiving experiences, you came up with your program, Made to Thrive system. And can you explain how that system came about?
So that actually it's an accumulation of life's work, basically. From my own challenges growing up, through challenges in the fire department, through looking at different, like as a counselor, I have access to many people, like from all walks of life, their histories, their personalities, their goals, their dreams, their fears, um, as well as, of course, my family's, and my father's when he was dying, and my mom's, now that she's in-home hospice care as well. But the system came through just those years of experience, and then synthesize. I was told years ago I was a good synthesizer of data, and I didn't. I kind of knew what they meant, but I kind of didn't until more recent years, and I get it. I could be dealing with a lot of complex things, and I just synthesize it in a way that I can then share it with people so that it's not as complex. Like I can break it down into more simple steps that you can take, for example.
Okay.
So this system, it helped me like overcome things like I had this fear of not being good enough, and I can have all sorts of reasons why I had it, but that's not the important part. The part is that I had it and it was wreaking havoc in my world. Like I really wasn't enjoying my best life. And so as I healed that and got the support I got, books I read, like all sorts of things, workshop, there's all sorts of things I did. I realized that for most of us, whatever is causing our pain and suffering outside of like a physical condition, fear is playing a role in it. And when we can manage that fear effectively, and notice I said manage. I didn't say overcome. I didn't say defeat. I didn't say conquer. I said manage.
Okay.
When we can manage it effectively, we experience better outcomes. We enjoy a better life, a better quality of life. And the reason I didn't say like conquer it or overcome it is because it's biologically wired in us. Our survival, our physical survival depends on it.
Yeah.
So if we see a snake, our body reacts a certain way so that we can be safe. Same thing, like if your house catches on fire, you react a certain way so that you can be safe. So we're not really meant, I don't think, to not experience fear. I think that it's there. We just need to learn how to manage it. So what I discovered with myself and working with thousands of clients is it's usually starts as a conversation in our head.
Yes.
We have a worry, a concern about something. And internally, we're just talking about it, and it grows into this big thing.
It
And
does.
in real life, once you face it, it's not that big of a thing. Now, I'm not talking about end of life issues. As far as I know, all of us die. I don't know of anybody who gets out of this deal alive. And that can be scary for people, especially depending on what you think happens after you die, where you think you go. And so when you're at peace with that, then the fear of dying, it's just not there as much anymore. You're just kind of like, okay, well, for people who, like I was raised Southern Baptist, so they believe that you go to heaven and the streets are paved with gold and all these things. So if you believe that's where you're going, then in theory, you shouldn't be as scared of dying as somebody who's really concerned that they might go to the other place. But there are other religions, just we all believe differently and somewhat the same. So it's just kind of interesting to me with that. But the Made to Thrive system really came from just, doing my own work and guiding clients through theirs because, I can't say I don't have any answers, but my job is to ask the right questions so that you find your own answers.
Oh,
And so,
that's a great way to do things instead of giving people an answer because they normally don't. It's not a permanent change if they're given something when they should, like you, direct them to their own answers.
Right. So that is what the book Made to Thrive is. It gives you information, but it also asks a ton of questions. And I know that some people aren't happy with that, but that's the way that you find your answers to whatever you're struggling with. You
Mhm.
have to have the questions, and then you have to do the introspective work to get your answers. Because otherwise, if I give you Denise's answer, well, Denise was a firefighter. Denise was, she's an adventure racer. She does all these crazy things that, like my best friend, I'm telling you right now, not a nature girl, not ever, not gonna, does not like it, doesn't like to hike in the woods, doesn't even like to really walk around the neighborhood, So if I give her my answer, it's not going to fit her. It's not.
You're right, it won't.
And so I have to ask her questions to help her get her answer that's authentic and genuine to her. So the Made to Thrive system is really about guiding people in that kind of way. It's like asking questions to help people get their best answers.
That's really amazing. I like the idea of helping someone find their own answers because, like you said, it's the only way that it's going to be a permanent change or make a difference in their life. So I totally agree. You have come up with 8 courageous practices. So can you explain, are there different levels?
No, they're each, so I call them practices because we practice like an athlete practices their skills. If you're a computer analyst, you're going to practice your skills, you're going to develop them. So I think of it as the more we practice, the better we get. And
Okay.
because we're human, we're wired with certain things. So I'm just going to use you one example from here. I'll use 2 actually, because this one's funny. I'm going to tell one on myself.
Okay.
So one day I had an appointment for a very important meeting, and I live in Georgia, and it gets really hot here in the summer and humid. And I'm driving down the road in my car, and the air conditioner is not working.
Oh no.
And so I get really upset about it, right? Like I'm going to look bad for this interview. Like I had this whole conversation going in my head. I'm going to look terrible. I'm going to do terrible. They're not going to like me. I'm not going to do a good job. Like all this, all because I'm going to show up all sweaty and just gross and da 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 da. And out of frustration, my fist pounded the dash of the car.
Okay.
And I realized that the vents were closed on the AC.
Oh, no.
The AC were closed. So it wasn't that the air conditioner wasn't working. It was that the vents were closed, and I didn't realize that. So I was busy being right about the air conditioner being broken, and then caught up in my story of how awful and horrible this was, so that I couldn't even see the solution that was right there in front of me. And that's something that we
Powerful.
humans do. That's what we do. We get right about whatever it is, and we can't even see solutions that are literally right in front of our faces. And that sometimes it's just a simple thing. Like all I had to do, think about it, was flip the vents open, and cool air came out, and I still had plenty of time to cool off before I arrived at my meeting. So I like sharing that one because that tells you that I'm just as fallible as anyone else. And I know this stuff, right? But I'm human. So that's why I call it a practice. Like we have to stay mindful, and we have to practice this. You really have to exert energy, like conscious energy, to have this kind of shift so that you can find those better solutions or possibilities for yourself. One of my other favorite tools that I like to teach people is about drama. Do you know drama, Mary Elaine?
Trauma?
Yeah.
Oh, trauma. Yes. Trauma. Yeah.
Yeah. So drama is a dance that involves a victim, a rescuer, and a persecutor. And if I am playing victim, then you are either my rescuer or my persecutor. Because if you're doing what I want you to do, you're my rescuer. If you're not doing what I want you to do, you're my persecutor. Now, I'm not saying that you are acting with that intention. I'm saying that's where I put you. because I'm playing victim in this triangle is what I call it.
Okay.
And so we move around on that because, as a firefighter, I was a rescuer, right? So if I rescued somebody and they weren't happy with, let's say I broke down their door to get to them, then they may feel victimized that I broke down their door and they may turn me into their persecutor. Sounds strange, but this is how it works. So this is what happens in relationships. And the key to stopping the drama in life and having more peace of mind and more joy is to simply take personal responsibility for everything. And when I say that, it's like, so think about it. I could be mad at whoever I had loaned my car to that shut the vents on my van that day. I could have blamed them and been all mad with them and all that. Or I could have just said, oh, wow, I didn't notice that the vents were closed. Let me open them and be done with it, which is what happened, right?
Right. Okay.
So the key is just to take personal responsibility. And it's I'll say this, but it's not totally accurate, as if we created that incident. So not like I created it like I intended to be like in a car accident, but more like what is this going to teach me? What good can come from this for me? And maybe if I was in a car accident, and especially if it was my fault, then maybe what I need to learn is whatever mistake I made so that I don't repeat it. And I don't have to get into the drama around it. It's just, I'm human. I made a mistake. Here's what I've learned. I'll do this next time so that the same mistake doesn't happen again. And then we keep living our life without all that drama stuff that we humans seem to get sucked into.
I love that analogy, but and that your discussion of it, because I think you're right. We get stuck in drama, and we sometimes just keep fueling the situation instead of stepping back and, like you're saying, taking responsibility for your part in whatever has occurred. That's
right. So this is hard to do. So when my dad was on dialysis, I was taking him to dialysis one day for his treatment. And you got to get, like, he could no longer drive. And my father was the kind of guy that was happiest when he was in the middle of the road going somewhere. Sometimes I don't even think it mattered where. He just liked to get out and explore. Well, he could no longer drive, and I'm taking him to dialysis, and I turned to the right, and he had wanted me to turn left. And when I turned to the right, he raged at me. And I don't mean like yelled, I mean raged. So I pulled the car over to the side of the road, and I said, I cannot drive safely with you yelling at me like this. You can either be quiet or you can get out and I can call an ambulance to take you. But I can't drive. I can't risk harming another innocent family because I'm a nervous wreck driving behind the wheel with you doing that. And so he was quiet. And then I said, Dad, if you're angry about your situation, I have space for that. You can yell at me. You can talk about how angry you are, but you cannot rage at me while I'm driving, because he was directing all of his anger at me. And I was just having I couldn't drive safely, and I knew it. No. So he was quiet, and what felt like minutes, but was probably really only a few seconds went by. And I said, well, what's it going to be? Do you want me to call an ambulance or what? And he said, well, I'm being quiet, aren't I? And so we proceeded. And then I apologized as we pulled out, because it hit me when I was driving down the road after we got over the drama, if you will, that I didn't give him a choice. Here was a man who likes choice? I like choice. You like choice. We all like choice. But here was a man who had all these choices all these years, who all of a sudden didn't have choice. And so what I learned from that, this is about taking responsibility. I didn't invite him to rage at me. I want to be clear on that. And I did not accept his behavior. I want to be clear on that. But what I did learn from it by taking responsibility was to go, oh my God, he just wants to feel like he has some control and some choice, because so much is out of his control right now, and so many choices have been taken away. So from then on, when I would take him anywhere, I would say, hey, Dad, which way do you want to go? And then he would tell me. And even if it was the way that I thought was stupid and ridiculous or whatever, I didn't matter because he chose the way, that's the way we were going to go. That was something I could give him, right? Out of love. And so just that's like a way that sometimes you can take responsibility for something, not excusing bad behavior or dangerous behavior. But if when we can come out of the drama and the trauma of it and step into that compassionate space with taking responsibility, like what was my part in this? That's all you're saying. You're not saying it's totally my fault. I'm not saying do that. I'm saying what was my part in this? Well, when I did that and I realized that with my father, it helped me have a better quality relationship with him at the end of his life than we would have had I not been able to do that that day. And had I not had that kind of awakening, if you will.
Now that you mention that, I think I could have given Dad more options instead of wanting something to happen my way. And if it didn't happen, then we couldn't do whatever activity he wanted to do. So thank you. I've learned a valuable lesson from you, so I can hopefully do it differently with somebody else that I encounter, because that's a really great point. I have to give Dad credit, though. I just started driving, and well, he got to the point where I guess he had his driver's license lapsed, so he had to take the test again, as well as the road test. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we are going to have a difficult situation here, because I thought he passed the test. And then I was with him when he went out on the road trip with the instructor, and I had to wait until they came back. And I'm thinking, I just hope that he followed the rules of the road and that he did everything safely, because I didn't want to be the one to take his driver's license away. The instructor looked at me and I'm like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. He did pass, Dad, but I was glad that at one point Dad just let me drive everywhere, and there was no fighting over like the car keys or his possible bad driving that could have hurt someone else. So I was grateful for that. So you're right. We have to take those situations and really be grateful for them, and grateful that you're having that time with the person that you're caring for. And I really appreciate that.
Well, and I am a big proponent for safety, not just because I was a firefighter, but I am a bit of an adventuresome soul. And even though I love my adventures and I do take risk, I believe in doing them as safely as possible. So I call them calculated risk. So when it comes to safety and you're caring for an elderly parent or just an elderly person, you're their caregiver. Yes, you may have to come to the point to where you take away their choice and you say, I'm sorry, you can't drive anymore. Because ultimately, as the caregiver, at least from my point of view, from Denise's point of view, I am responsible for the safety of, and now it's not my father anymore, but it's my mom. I'm responsible for her safety. So just like when I was a child, she was responsible for my safety. And she would tell me, no, you can't do that. Stop. You know, she wasn't always nice about it because she had to keep me safe. That was her job. Now it's that way for me with her. So I would say don't beat up on yourself if you've taken choice away from one of your family members or your loved ones, because if it's done in the spirit of safety, and that includes your well-being, you got to remember that. So like my mom wanted me to give her baths. And because of some challenges I was having at the time, it wasn't safe for me to do that. First of all, that's not my area of expertise. I've done it before when she broke her arm after she retired. We did okay, but I was younger then too. But it wasn't a good idea for me to do it at the point in time when she needed it. And so I said, Mom, we really need outside help. We need a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And she resisted it. But finally, I'm like, Mom, it's not safe. Like, where are we going to be if
Mm-hmm.
we both go down? Or what's going to happen to you if something happens to me and I
Mm-hmm.
can't care for you anymore? Like that's it. You've said I'm all you've got, and you're right.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to take care of me too. And sometimes that does mean saying no to something she might want. Like, this is a silly example, but I'll give it. She recently, I really think she wanted an Olive Garden. It's an Italian restaurant. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
anybody's familiar with it, but she really wanted it. But I tried to make it happen, but I couldn't in a way that worked for me and my work schedule. I
Okay.
just couldn't do it in the
Mm-hmm.
time frame we were working with. And so I ended up telling her, like, Mom, we can't do this. We can do this and this. Like, I gave her 3 other choices instead. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll do this other, like, we can do Olive Garden at another time because I
Mm-hmm.
found out how their system works, but I can't do that right now. So it's okay as a caregiver to say sometimes, like, I can't do that because you're running a marathon. You're not running a sprint.
Great
And
point. You are
it's,
running a marathon.
yeah, and it's an emotional marathon, it's a
Mm-hmm.
physical marathon, it's a spiritual marathon, and it's a mental marathon.
Mm.
That hits you on all planes, on all levels of our being. And that means that it's okay to take care of you. You've got to. It's like you have to, so that you can take care of that, of your loved one.
No, that's a very, very good point. I know many caregivers don't do some self-care for themselves. And it's pretty frightening to me to think that 30% of caregivers will actually die before the one that they're caring for because they're not taking good care of themselves. And I like the way that you approach it, Denise, in terms of giving the person the choice or explaining why something can't work for you or in your schedule for that particular day and time. So I think that caregivers really need to learn a lot of strategies from you that you've given us throughout this interview, which I really appreciate. So can you give us some 3 takeaways from your experience as a caregiver and now as a coach using the practices that you've developed? Because I think they're really very practical and things that people just don't think about.
So the first step really is make peace with yourself. And that means to acknowledge that you're doing the best you can at any given moment, given everything on your plate. So really be generous and loving with yourself first. And that includes the self-care that we were just discussing.
Mm-hmm.
Second tip is as much as you can, and you are human and you're allowed to be,
Mm-hmm.
Have an appreciation for what it's like in their world, the person you're caring for.
Mm.
And then ask yourself, like, how can I treat them well given that that's going on for them, or something like that. So for
That's a good
me,
point. You
for
have to
me,
accept it for I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, go ahead.
No, I just think that you have to, like, for my mother had Alzheimer's and toward the end she couldn't communicate. So yeah, you have to accept that person, my mother in this case, for who she was. And yes, she's at a different space, but I have to it- I envelop her in that space because she's doing the best she can and I have to accommodate her because I can't expect her to do certain things that she's not capable of. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So, and that's part of it too. Like, we can't, it's like I tell people when they're getting married, if you marry someone with the expectation that you're going to change them, your marriage is going to fail,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not what marriage does.
No,
You
it
don't
doesn't.
change people. You can't change people. People have to, if they change, it's because they want to change themselves. But
Mhm.
anyway, Another caregiver tip really is, have compassion for yourself, have compassion for them. And if there's something that you really love, like for me, I love puppies and I love babies and I love hearing them laugh. Babies, not puppies. So during the process with my dad, when things got really down, like when I got really down or things felt so heavy, I would go to playgrounds and listen to kids laugh, or I would find videos of babies laughing online if I couldn't get away, just to lighten my energy, if you will, just to bring me up, to remind me that while this really hard stuff that my family's going through is happening and it's real, there's other parts to life that are still joyful and light. So treat yourself to whatever that is. Some people it's a cup of tea. Some people it's a bubble bath. Some people it's just reading a good book. Like whatever that thing is for you, I don't know, but find one or two key things. And even if it's just 5 minutes a day, or if you're in the thick of it and you can take a 10-minute break, and just enjoy that. I encourage you to do that because it'll serve you well and the person that you're caring for, because they get a better you.
Yes, definitely. I like that. So take care of yourself, take care of the person, and just show up and be more present for who you are. And you could be more authentic with the person that you're caring for. That's the whole goal. So if people would like to get in touch with you, Denise, how would they find you and be able to talk with you?
The best way is to go to my website. It's courageousleadershipacademy.com. So that's the best way. You can find more about my business, and you can connect with me. There's a way you can do that on the site. If just in case you want to email me, you can email me at contact@courageousleadershipacademy.com.
Okay.
And right now I'm offering if you go to the website, you'll find it's a free tip sheet on 8 ways to transform fear.
Wow. That's amazing.
So fear is involved in the end of life issues that we've been discussing. And so some people might find that helpful.
Thank you. That's a perfect gift to give people, because they need to enjoy a different move away from the fear, at least accept it, and be able to move on in the best way that they can. So thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation with you. I really admire your course of being a firefighter and turning into an amazing coach and sharing your experiences with caregiving. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on, Mary Elaine, and thank your listeners for tuning in. And please be good to Mary Elaine. She's an awesome lady, and she's got so much to offer you. So take advantage of the support that she offers, because she is incredible.
Well, thank you very much. I think they need to get in touch with you at your Courageous Leadership Academy. Is that correct?
Correct.
And they will meet an amazing person that we've had an incredible discussion with this afternoon. So thank you so much, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Caregiver Cast today. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. Get involved with the show. Send your email to mpetrucci2002@gmail.com. And we'll see you again next week for another episode of Caregiver Cast.